I should have hated him. That would have been the sensible thing, right? Hate the guy who left me stranded in front of hundreds of people, who vanished without a word, leaving me to face the whispers, the humiliation, the aching silence. But when I saw him again 2 years later, standing under those brutal stage lights, looking at me with eyes that still knew the rhythm of my heartbeat, I didn't hate him. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But all I felt was that same pull I had tried so hard to bury. The rehearsal room smelled of sweat, dust, and old wood, the kind of place where dreams were built and broken in equal measure. I had clawed my way back after he disappeared. I had sworn never to need anyone again, never to let another body's movement dictate mine. And yet, here he was, Ethan Hayes, my old partner, my ghost come to life. He was leaning against the bar, arms folded, his dancer's frame still lean, still magnetic, but sharper now, like life had carved its lessons into him. His dark hair fell a little longer than before, messy in a way that was careless but devastatingly precise. And when he smiled, hesitant, almost apologetic, it cut through me with the precision of a blade. "Caleb," he said. Just my name. Soft, almost reverent. I wanted to laugh in his face. I wanted to ask him where the hell he had been when I needed him, why he had left without a trace, why he thought he had the right to speak my name like it meant something to him. But my throat betrayed me, tight with the weight of 2 years' worth of questions I never dared say out loud. Instead, I muttered, "You're late." It was petty. It was pathetic. But it was all I could manage without unraveling. He chuckled under his breath, the sound achingly familiar. Some things never change. But everything had changed. The director clapped her hands, her voice slicing through the air. "Pair up. We've got a lot of ground to cover before opening night. Caleb, Ethan, you two will be together." Of course, the universe had a twisted sense of humor. As we moved to the center of the floor, I felt every pair of eyes on us. Everyone knew the story. Everyone knew how he had abandoned me in the middle of our last big performance. How I had stood there, shattered, before picking up the pieces alone. And now here we were, expected to dance like none of that had happened. His hand brushed mine as we took our positions. It was accidental, probably, but my skin burned where we touched. My pulse betrayed me, drumming in a rhythm that used to sync perfectly with his. I hated myself for remembering. The music started. For a split second, I forgot the pain, the betrayal, the nights I had cursed his name. Because when our bodies moved, they remembered what my mind wanted to erase. The way his palm fit against mine. The way his chest rose and fell in time with mine. The way he led with confidence but always left space for me to shine. God. It was like coming home to a place I swore I'd never return to. But the music stopped, and reality came crashing back. I pulled away before the final note faded, the absence between us heavy and suffocating. Ethan's eyes flickered with something regret. Longing. I didn't know. I didn't want to know. "Don't think this changes anything," I muttered. His lips curved. Bittersweet. "It changes everything. Caleb. You just don't see it yet." I hated him. I wanted to hate him. But every step, every breath, every stolen glance betrayed me. Because 2 years hadn't killed what was between us. It had only buried it deeper. That night, I lay awake in my tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling cracked from too many winters. My phone buzzed with messages I ignored. Friends, co-workers, people who wanted pieces of me but never the whole. Only one name haunted me, and it wasn't on my screen. I could still feel the ghost of his hand at my waist, the echo of his breath against my cheek when we spun too close. Memories I had locked away were clawing back to the surface, our late-night practices when the city was asleep. his laughter spilling into the empty studio, the way he once kissed me in the wings, desperate and breathless, before running on stage like nothing had happened. I had convinced myself it meant nothing. He had proved that when he vanished. But now, the line between hate and longing blurred, and I couldn't tell which side I was falling toward. The next day, rehearsal was worse. The director pushed us harder, demanding intimacy, demanding vulnerability. Every correction was another knife. Closer, Caleb. Trust him, Caleb. Feel him, Caleb. As if trust were something you could choreograph. At one point, she had us hold the final lift me in his arms, chest to chest, eyes locked. My heart betrayed me, pounding against him like it remembered a language my mind had forgotten. His grip was strong, steady, like he would never let me fall. Liar, I thought. You already did. When rehearsal ended, I bolted, shoving my things into my bag. But he caught me by the door. Caleb, wait. I froze, cursing myself for stopping. His voice was lower now, stripped of performance, bare and almost broken. I owe you an explanation. I turned, bitter laugh on my tongue. 2 years too late. He flinched, but didn't back down. You're right. I should have told you. I should have stayed. But I didn't disappear because I wanted to. I left because I had to. I scoffed. That's the best you've got. His jaw tightened. My mom was sick. Cancer. She didn't have long. And she begged me not to tell anyone, not even you. She didn't want pity. So I left. I spent every day by her side until she was gone. By the time I could breathe again. By the time I could face you, I didn't know how. The world tilted. Anger collided with grief. Compassion with rage. I wanted to scream, to cry, to hit him, to hold him. I wanted everything and nothing. So you left me. I whispered. You let me believe you didn't care. His voice cracked. I cared too much. That's why it hurt too much to face you. But I never stopped thinking about you. Not once. The silence between us was unbearable. My heart warred with itself, torn between betrayal and understanding, love and loss. Finally, I whispered, you don't get to walk back into my life and expect forgiveness. He nodded slowly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to prove I'm still worth dancing with. And just like that, the war inside me grew louder. The next morning, I woke up with a pit in my stomach. Rehearsal loomed like a storm cloud, and no matter how much coffee I poured down my throat, I couldn't wash away the dread or the echo of Ethan's words. His mom. Cancer. The way his voice had cracked when he said it. I wanted to call him a liar, to cling to the safety of anger. But his eyes, I had known them for years. Every flicker of truth and falsehood written there. Last night, they hadn't lied. Still, truth didn't erase pain. By the time I walked into the studio, the others were already stretching, chatter bouncing around the room. Ethan was at the far end, adjusting his shoes, head bowed. He looked up the second I entered, as if he'd been waiting. Our eyes locked for too long, long enough that the girl next to me smirked knowingly. I ignored it, dropped my bag, and went through the motions of warming up. But the air between us was thick, like a storm waiting for thunder. The director's voice cut through. Let's pick up from the second act. Caleb. Ethan, eyes on me. This piece is about heartbreak and rediscovery. I want every ounce of pain and passion you've got. You hear me? I almost laughed. If she only knew. We took our places. His hand found my waist, tentative at first, then firm when I didn't pull away. The music swelled. Our bodies collided in motion, a choreography of tension and surrender. Every lift, every spin, every breath. We weren't just dancing. We were bleeding. At one point, he whispered, barely audible, "I'm sorry." It wasn't in the script. It wasn't in the music. But it was there, pressed against my ear as he lifted me, voice trembling with something raw. I clenched my jaw, refusing to answer. Not yet. By the end of rehearsal, sweat clung to us like a second skin. My chest heaved, not just from the effort but from the fire inside me. When the director clapped, praising the chemistry between us, the others nodded in agreement. They saw art. They didn't see the battlefield underneath. As the group dispersed, Ethan lingered. "Can we talk?" I grabbed my bag. "We already did." He stepped in front of me, blocking the door. "Caleb, please. Just 10 minutes. That's all I'm asking." His tone wasn't commanding, it was pleading. And that, more than anything, broke through my defenses. Ethan Hayes, once so sure of himself, was stripped bare in front of me. "Fine," I muttered. 10 minutes. We walked to the back corridor, away from curious eyes. The hum of vending machines and the faint buzz of a flickering light filled the silence. He leaned against the wall, running a hand through his hair. "I know I don't deserve a second chance," he started. "But dancing with you, Aga, and it feels like breathing after being underwater. I didn't realize how much I needed it until now." I swallowed hard. "You don't get to say things like that. Not after leaving me in ruins." His gaze dropped. "I live with that regret every day. Watching you walk on stage alone that night, Caleb. I saw the video. I tortured myself with it. And when I saw the pain in your eyes, I wanted to come back. But I couldn't. I wasn't strong enough." I hated him for his honesty, because honesty made it harder to keep my walls up. "You broke me," I whispered. "Do you even get that? I trusted you with everything, my career, my heart, and you vanished. Do you know how humiliating it was to answer questions I didn't have answers for? To feel like I wasn't enough for you to stay?" His voice cracked. "You were more than enough. You were the only thing that kept me sane while my mom was dying. I thought of you every day, but I couldn't drag you into that darkness. I thought I was protecting you." I scoffed bitterly. "That's not protection, Ethan. That's abandonment." The words hung in the air, sharp and final. His shoulders sagged, as though the weight of them pressed him down. But then, slowly, he stepped closer. His hand hovered near mine, not touching, just there. "Tell me what I can do. Tell me how to prove to you that I'm not that same coward anymore." My throat tightened. I wanted to push him away. I wanted to pull him closer. Both urges fought like fire and ice inside me. Finally, I whispered, "Don't let me fall. Not again." His eyes softened, wet with something he wouldn't let spill. "I won't." The next week was torture. Beautiful, excruciating torture. Every rehearsal blurred the line between performance and reality. When we danced, the world shrank until it was just us. Our bodies tangled in something more than choreography. When the music demanded intimacy, I felt his breath against my skin, and it wasn't acting. When the script called for anguish, it was too easy to let the real hurt seep through. People noticed. Whispers spread in the studio hallways. "They're electric together. It's like they're in love." "Are they?" I pretended not to hear. But deep down, the whispers weren't wrong. One evening, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, the director dismissed us early. I grabbed my things, ready to bolt. But Ethan caught me again, this time outside, under the fading pink sky. "Come with me," he said softly. "I don't think. Just one drink. No heavy talk. Just us. Against my better judgment, I nodded. We ended up at a small bar tucked between brick buildings. The kind of place with dim lights and cheap beer, where no one cared who you were. We sat in a booth, the air heavy with the smell of fried food and nostalgia. For the first time in 2 years, felt almost normal. We talked about nothing and everything: music, old movies, the disastrous audition where we first met. He made me laugh, really laugh, the kind that ached in my stomach. And for a fleeting moment, I forgot the wound between us. But then he looked at me, really looked, and the laughter faded. His hand brushed mine on the table, tentative but deliberate. "Caleb," he whispered, voice thick. I never stopped. He didn't finish, but the words hung in the air anyway. I should have pulled away. I should have reminded him of the pain, the betrayal. But I didn't. I let his hand rest against mine, warmth seeping into my skin, thawing something I thought was long dead. And that scared me more than anything. The following days, I found myself caught in a dangerous rhythm. I'd wake up telling myself to keep distance, to guard my heart. But by nightfall, after hours of dancing, after feeling his presence sync so perfectly with mine, my resolve would weaken. One night, after rehearsal, he walked me home. The city hummed around us, horns blaring, neon lights flickering, laughter spilling from bars. Yet it felt like we moved in a bubble, just the two of us. At my doorstep, I hesitated. He did too. Our eyes locked, a silent war raging between us. Then he leaned in slow, hesitant, giving me every chance to turn away. My breath caught, my pulse thundered. For 2 years, I had imagined this moment, cursed it, craved it. And when his lips finally brushed mine, soft and trembling, all the walls I had built crumbled in an instant. It wasn't a kiss of triumph. It wasn't fire and passion. It was fragile, almost broken, two souls trying to piece themselves back together. When we pulled apart, I whispered, "This doesn't mean I forgive you." He smiled faintly, sadness in his eyes. "I know, but it means I still have a chance." And God help me, I let him walk away with that hope. The kiss lingered in my thoughts like an afterimage I couldn't shake, haunting me through the following days. Every time Ethan's hand brushed mine in rehearsal, every time our eyes met in the mirror, it was there. The memory of softness, of possibility, of a door cracked open when I swore it had been locked shut forever. And yet, I kept telling myself it was nothing, a mistake, a weakness in a moment of exhaustion. That lie was easier than facing the truth that a part of me still wanted him. Desperately. The director only made it worse. She pushed us harder, demanding more vulnerability, more intimacy. "Don't just dance next to each other," she barked one afternoon, her voice slicing through the air. "Dance like you're breathing each other's oxygen." The irony almost made me laugh, because that was exactly what it felt like, suffocating and exhilarating all at once. We were rehearsing the second act, the one where the characters' former lovers found themselves pulled back together after years apart. The choreography was brutal in its honesty, touches that lingered, embraces that weren't really part of the dance, a kiss that hovered just long enough to make the audience ache. When Ethan's hand slid up my arm, when his forehead rested against mine, I could hear the tremor in his breath. He wasn't acting. Neither was I. By the end of rehearsal, I was raw, my chest tight, my skin buzzing. As the others packed up, Ethan stayed close, his presence impossible to ignore. "You okay?" he asked softly. I glared at him, though my voice betrayed me with a tremor. Why wouldn't I be? He tilted his head, studying me the way he always had, as if he could read the things I tried to bury. "Because you're shaking." I cursed under my breath, snatching my bag. Maybe that's because dancing with someone who broke me in half isn't exactly relaxing. His jaw tightened, but he didn't fire back. He just nodded slowly, accepting the hit. I'll keep proving to you that I won't break you again, even if it takes the rest of my life. Something in me cracked at those words, but I didn't let it show. Not yet. That weekend, the company organized a casual get-together at a cast member's apartment. I hadn't planned on going, but somehow I found myself standing in a crowded living room. Music pulsing, laughter spilling over. Ethan was there too, of course, across the room. He wasn't surrounded by admirers like he used to be. He stood a little apart, drink in hand, gaze drifting until it landed on me. Our eyes met, and suddenly the room felt too small. I tried to distract myself, chatting with a fellow dancer named Marcus. He was funny, easygoing, and he flirted shamelessly, his hand brushing my shoulder as he leaned closer. I should have welcomed the distraction, but every time I laughed at Marcus's jokes, I caught Ethan's eyes darken from across the room. Eventually, I slipped out onto the balcony, needing air. The night was cool, the city buzzing below, 1,000 lights against the dark. I leaned against the railing, trying to steady my thoughts. I didn't hear the door open, but I felt Himathan before I saw him. He stepped out, closing the door behind him. For a moment, he just stood there, silent. "You're good with Marcus," he finally said, his tone tight. I snorted. "Jealous?" His eyes met mine, unflinching. "Yeah, I am." The honesty stole the air from my lungs. I wasn't prepared for it. Wasn't ready to hear him admit what I had always suspected. "You don't get to be jealous," I snapped. "Not after everything." "I know," he said quickly, stepping closer. "I know I don't have the right, but I can't help it. Caleb, watching you with him, it kills me, because all I want is to be the one making you laugh again." My chest ached, torn between fury and longing. I wanted to shove him away. I wanted to kiss him until I forgot every reason not to. "You can't just come back and say things like that," I whispered. "You don't get to decide when you want me." His voice softened, almost breaking. "I didn't stop wanting you. Not for a second. I just lost the chance to show it." The city roared beneath us, cars honking, music drifting from the apartment. But in that moment, the world narrowed to just us. He reached out, slow, giving me time to pull back. His fingers brushed mine on the railing, tentative, trembling, and I didn't move. For a long moment, we stood there, hands barely touching, hearts beating in sync despite everything. Then the door opened, laughter spilling out, and the moment shattered. Pulled away, slipping back inside before I could make a mistake I couldn't undo. The days that followed were unbearable. Every rehearsal was fire and ice. The chemistry between us grew undeniable, spilling over into stolen glances, accidental touches that lingered too long, silences heavy with words unsaid. The others noticed, of course. Whispers followed us like shadows. One afternoon, after a grueling session, I stayed late to practice alone. Or at least, I thought I was alone. I was halfway through a sequence when I heard the door creak. Ethan stepped in, sweat still clinging to him, his shirt damp, his hair falling into his eyes. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said quietly. I didn't answer, just kept moving, letting the music drown out the thoughts. But then he crossed the room, his presence pulling me in like gravity. "Dance with me," he said. I stopped, breathless, glaring. "This isn't the time." "It's always the time." His eyes burned into mine. "Because this is the only place where we don't lie." When we dance, you feel it too. Don't tell me you don't. My pulse hammered. I hated him for being right. He stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel the heat of him. Please, Caleb. Just one song. The music started again. Soft. Aching. And against all my better judgment, I let him pull me in. We moved together. Not as partners in rehearsal. Not as performers for an audience, but as two broken men trying to find their way back to each other. His hand at my waist was steady. His eyes locked on mine. Searching. When the final note faded, we were standing chest to chest. Breath mingling. Hearts racing. Neither of us moved. And then his lips were on mine. Desperate. Hungry. All the years of silence and longing crashing down. This kiss wasn't fragile. It wasn't hesitant. It was fire. Raw and consuming. A promise and a plea all at once. When we finally broke apart, gasping, I whispered, "You'll ruin me again." His forehead rested against mine, voice shaking. "Or I'll save you. Maybe both." And I knew, with terrifying certainty, that I was already falling all over again. I didn't sleep that night. My lips still burned from his kiss, my skin alive with the memory of his hands. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every second, every breath, every trembling heartbeat. It wasn't just a kiss, it was a crack in the dam I had built. And the flood was coming. The next day at rehearsal, the air between us buzzed. Every look, every touch, every note of music was loaded, heavy with the memory of what had happened. I told myself to focus, to bury it, but the more I tried, the stronger it grew. The director, oblivious to our war, praised us. "This is it," she said, clapping her hands. "This is the fire the piece needed. Hold on to it." If only she knew what it was costing me to hold on. When rehearsal ended, Ethan cornered me again, this time outside on the steps. The autumn air was crisp, biting against my sweat-soaked skin. "Caleb," he said, his voice low, urgent. "We need to talk about last night." I shook my head. "No, we don't." "Yes, we do," he insisted, stepping closer. "Because you kissed me back." I froze, the truth of it cutting sharp. "That doesn't mean anything." His eyes softened. "It means everything." I hated him for that. Hated him for seeing through me, for knowing the truth I couldn't admit even to myself. Before I could respond, Marcus walked out, throwing us both a curious glance. "You guys coming to grab food?" I jumped at the interruption, grateful. "Yeah, coming." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't stop me as I followed Marcus down the street. Dinner with the group should have been a relief, but it wasn't. Marcus sat close, his easy jokes and warm smile pulling laughs from me I didn't feel. I could sense Ethan across the table, watching, his silence louder than the chatter around us. At one point, Marcus leaned in, his hand brushing mine as he passed me a napkin. "You know," he said softly, "you don't have to look so serious all the time. You're allowed to have fun." I smiled faintly, though my heart wasn't in it, because the only person who ever made me feel truly alive was sitting across the table. His eyes dark with jealousy and something deeper, something I couldn't name. That night, I found Ethan waiting outside the restaurant. He hadn't gone in with the rest. He was leaning against the brick wall, hands shoved in his pockets, jaw tight. "You and Marcus," he said flatly. I rolled my eyes. "Don't start." "I can't help it," he said, stepping closer. "Seeing him touch you, it feels like someone's ripping me apart." I let out a sharp laugh. "Now you know how it feels. Welcome to my world, Ethan." He flinched, but didn't back down. You're right. I deserve that. But Caleb didn't punish me by giving him what used to be ours. The words hit me like a punch. What used to be ours. Past tense. And yet, standing there under the glow of the streetlight, it didn't feel like the past. It felt terrifyingly present. I turned to leave, but he caught my wrist not hard, just enough to stop me. Don't walk away from me again, he whispered. My chest ached. You walked away first. His grip loosened. His eyes pained. And I've regretted it every day since. I yanked my hand free and left him standing there, torn between the anger I clung to and the love I couldn't kill. The days that followed blurred into a mess of longing and restraint. Ethan tried God. He tried. Small things at first, bringing me water after rehearsals, waiting to walk me home, holding back his words when my walls went up. And little by little, it cracked. One evening, we stayed late to work on the final scene. The studio was quiet, empty except for us. The music began, soft and haunting. The choreography demanded everything: trust, surrender, intimacy. Halfway through, I stumbled, my body betraying the exhaustion I tried to hide. Ethan caught me instantly, his arms steady around me. Easy, he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. I wanted to push him away. Instead, I leaned into him, just for a second, just long enough to remember what it felt like to be safe in his arms. When I pulled back, his eyes searched mine, raw and vulnerable. Tell me you don't feel it, Caleb. Tell me and I'll stop. But I couldn't, because I did feel it. Every damn second. Instead, I whispered, you terrify me. His lips curved, bittersweet. You terrify me too. And then we were kissing again. Harder this time. Desperate. Like two people drowning and clinging to each other just to breathe. From that night on, we couldn't stay away. We met in secret late-night rehearsals. Stolen hours in the quiet corners of the theater. Whispered conversations in dressing rooms when no one else was around. It was reckless, dangerous, but I couldn't stop. He told me things he'd never told anyone: how his mom used to watch our performances on repeat, how he'd almost quit dancing after she died, how the only thing that pulled him back was the thought of me. I told him things I had never said out loud: how abandoned I felt that night, how I hated myself for still wanting him, how scared I was of letting him back in only to lose him again. Some nights we argued, our words sharp, cutting deep. Other nights, we couldn't keep our hands off each other, our kisses bruising, our bodies pressed together like we were trying to erase the space of the last 2 years. And through it all, the performance loomed closer. Opening night was less than 2 weeks away. The pressure mounted. The director demanded perfection. The company buzzed with nerves. The city's theater critics sharpened their pens. One evening, after a brutal run-through, she pulled us aside. Whatever you two are doing, keep it up, she said. The chemistry is unreal. People will feel this in their bones. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. If she only knew. As we left, Ethan caught my hand, squeezing it just once before letting go. The simple gesture sent a shiver through me. But Marcus noticed. He cornered me later, his voice low. You and Ethan. It's not just the dance, is it? I froze. What are you talking about? He smirked, though his eyes held something like disappointment. You don't have to lie. I've seen the way you look at each other. My chest tightened. It's complicated. It always is, he said, shrugging. Just be careful. He already broke you once. The warning lodged itself in my chest, heavy and true. That night, I walked home alone, the city lights blurring around me. The truth was simple. Even if I didn't want to admit it, I was in love with Ethan Hayes. Always had been. Probably always would be. The only question was, would love be enough this time? The rehearsal space reeked of sweat and rosin. The mirrors fogged with the breath of too many restless bodies chasing perfection. Yet all I saw was him. Ethan stood across the room, framed by the reflection of the studio lights, like a memory I'd begged to forget but never managed to. The pianist struck the opening chord, and as if fate itself commanded, Ethan and I were paired again. No one cared about the history written between us, the 2 years of silence, the questions that gnawed at my ribs every sleepless night. To them, it was just choreography. To me, it was reopening a wound that had never healed. When his hand brushed mine, the world collapsed into that single point of contact. The same heat, the same pulse, the same unspoken electricity that once made us unstoppable on stage. Except now, it was wrapped in tension, regret, and all the words we never said. Ready. Ethan's voice was low, careful, as if he were stepping into a minefield. I didn't answer. I let the music drag us into motion, into spins and leaps that demanded trust. My body remembered him even if my mind resented him. Every catch, every lift, every breath synchronized like muscle memory born from years of partnership. But beneath the surface, I felt the tremor in his fingers, the hesitation in his stance. He was holding something back. After rehearsal, sweat dripping down my spine, I grabbed my bag and headed for the exit before he could corner me. Of course, fate wasn't done tormenting me. He followed, his footsteps echoing behind mine. Alex, wait. 2 years ago, he'd disappeared without a word. No calls, no texts, no explanation, just silence. And now, that same voice pleaded with me in the hallway as if nothing had happened. I turned, anger flaring sharp in my chest. What could you possibly say that explains vanishing in the middle of a season? Do you know what you did to me? To us? Ethan swallowed hard. His jaw tightened. His eyes burned with something raw. I had no choice. Bullshit. The word cut like glass between us. For a moment, his mask cracked. Shame, pain, guilt all flickered in his expression. But I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. Not when the ache of abandonment still clung to my bones. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the city lights bleeding through my window, replaying every detail of the day. His touch, his eyes, his silence, and the unbearable truth that, even after 2 years, I still wasn't free of him. The next morning brought no relief. Coffee tasted bitter, the city too loud, the studio too bright. And when rehearsal began again, Ethan was there, unshakable, inevitable. The director paired us for the central duet, the piece that carried the soul of the entire show. It wasn't just a dance. It was trust, intimacy, vulnerability carved into motion. I wanted to refuse. My pride screamed at me to. But when Ethan's hand reached for mine, my body betrayed me again. I let him lead, let him draw me into the rhythm where resentment blurred into something dangerously close to longing. We moved as one, and the room held its breath. When the music ended, silence filled the studio like applause that never came. Even the director looked shaken. That's it. That's the spark. You couldn't lose it. But how could I hold on to something that had already broken me once? Later, Ethan found me again. Outside this time, beneath the heavy gray sky that threatened rain. I know I can't erase the past, he said quietly, but I came back because I couldn't stay away. Not from this. Not from you. I should have walked away. Should have told him that words meant nothing without the truth. But instead, I stood there, the storm inside me colliding with the storm above. and whispered the only thing my heart betrayed me into saying. "Then tell me why." His answer hung in the air, trembling on his lips. But before he could speak, the sky broke open and rain crashed down on us, drenching every shard of distance we'd been clinging to. And just like that, the curtain rose on the most dangerous dance of my life, one not on stage, but in the fragile space between forgiveness and ruin. The rehearsals grew harsher, the demands heavier, the premiere loomed closer, and with it, the weight of perfection. Everyone watched Ethan and me with an intensity that stripped us bare. They wanted magic, chemistry, passion, the very things that cost me my peace. Sometimes I caught him staring, like he wanted to say something but choked it back every time. Other times, his touch lingered longer than necessary, a silent plea I didn't dare answer. But late one night, after everyone else had left, I found him alone in the studio. No music, just the steady sound of his breath as he repeated the same sequence again and again, chasing something invisible. "Still the perfectionist," I said, my voice breaking the quiet. He froze, then turned, sweat slicking his hair to his forehead. His eyes softened. "You used to say it was what made me unbearable and irresistible at the same time." The words hit too close. I should have left. But instead, I stepped onto the floor, letting the silence press against us until I couldn't bear it. "Why now, Ethan?" My voice cracked. "Why come back now, when I finally learned how to live without you?" He took a step closer, his expression raw, stripped of all defenses. "Because I never learned how to live without you." The words burned through me, shattering every wall I'd built. But before I could answer, before I could surrender to the truth I still feared, I did the only thing I knew how to, turned, walked out, and left him standing in the hollow quiet of the studio. But his voice followed me long after the door shut. "I never learned how to live without you. And God help me, maybe I hadn't either." The night of the premiere arrived like a storm swallowing the city. Manhattan pulsed with headlights and restless energy, the theater glowing against the darkness like a promise and a threat all at once. Inside, velvet curtains framed a stage where every heartbeat, every secret, every fracture of love would be exposed under unforgiving light. Backstage, my body trembled not from nerves, but from the weight of what tonight meant. This wasn't just a performance. This was the culmination of 2 years of silence, 2 months of rehearsals, and a lifetime of unfinished words. And beside me stood Ethan, adjusting the cuff of his costume, his profile sharp, his jaw tight, his entire being stretched thin between composure and collapse. We hadn't spoken since that night in the empty studio when he confessed he'd never learned how to live without me. I carried his words like a bruise, pressing at it over and over, wondering if pain could ever become something softer. Tonight, there would be no running, no turning away. Tonight, the truth would bleed through movement, whether I wanted it to or not. 5 minutes. A stagehand called. Ethan turned to me. His eyes burned, steady and unflinching. "No matter what happens out there, Alex, just dance with me. One last time." I should have been furious at the finality in his tone, but instead, my chest caved under something fragile. A plea, a surrender, maybe even a goodbye. And then the lights rose, the curtains parted, and we were thrown into the fire. The first act was all structure and discipline, bodies carving lines in perfect unison. But when it came time for the duet, silence fell across the theater. The music began low, mournful strings swelling into something vast. Ethan reached for me, his hand trembling as it had the first day we rehearsed again. This was not just choreography. This was a confession. Every lift carried the weight of questions left unanswered. Every spin felt like chasing what had been lost. His touch seared me, each brush of fingers across my skin like an apology stitched into motion. When he caught me mid-fall, his arms locked around me, and I felt everything he'd never said, flooding through his body into mine. His chest heaved against my back, his breath hot at my neck, and the world melted into two heartbeats colliding under stage lights. I should have resisted, should have held the wall between us. Instead, I let go. I let the music break me open, let his hands write truths on my skin. I let the years of anger and longing unravel until only raw, unbearable honesty remained. The audience disappeared. The world disappeared. It was just Ethan and me, dancing not as partners, but as men who had loved and lost and still hadn't stopped. When the final chord struck, the theater erupted. Applause crashed over us like thunder. We stood center stage, chest to chest, sweat and tears indistinguishable. Ethan's hand lingered in mine long after the curtain fell. But backstage, reality returned. He pulled me aside, his voice shaking. "Alex, I owe you the truth." And finally, he told me, 2 years ago, the night he disappeared, his father had collapsed. Cancer. Aggressive. Fatal. Ethan had flown across the country without a word, drowning in hospital corridors and grief, burying himself in caretaking until there was nothing left to give. He'd wanted to call me, needed to, but guilt strangled him. Guilt for abandoning the company, for abandoning me, for choosing family over the dream we'd built together. By the time he was ready to come back, shame was the only thing he carried. I listened, my body trembling, tears hot against my cheeks. The anger I'd clung to for 2 years fractured under the weight of his confession. Pain remained, yes, but so did understanding. And beneath it all, the one thing I hadn't been able to kill, love. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice breaking. "I thought disappearing was easier than watching you hate me for leaving. But I was wrong. I've hated myself every day since." I stared at him, the boy who had once been my world, the man who still was. My throat closed around the truth I denied for too long. "I never hated you, Ethan. I just hated how much I still wanted you back." And before reason could interfere, pulled him into me. His lips crashed against mine, desperate, hungry, trembling with years of restraint finally torn apart. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't perfect. It was real. The kiss burned through us like fire meeting oxygen, the kind of fire that doesn't destroy but remakes. When we broke apart, our foreheads rested together, our breaths tangled. For the first time in 2 years, I felt whole. The weeks after the premiere blurred into ovations, reviews, and a company reborn by the chemistry no one could deny. Yet what mattered most wasn't the applause or the critics. It was the mornings when Ethan brewed coffee in my kitchen, humming off key. It was the nights when we rehearsed not for perfection, but for joy. It was rediscovering the rhythm of us, flawed and fragile, but alive. Healing wasn't instant. There were nights I woke in anger, mornings he woke in guilt. But we faced it together, spoke the truths we once buried, chose, day after day, not to run. And on the closing night of the show, when the curtain fell for the last time, Ethan took my hand not as a partner, not as an apology, but as something far simpler and far greater. "As long as you'll have me," he whispered. I smiled through tears, the theater roaring around us. I never stopped. The lights dimmed, the stage emptied, and for the first time in years, I stepped into a future not haunted by absence, but held by love. Because sometimes, the most beautiful dances are not the ones performed under the spotlight, but the ones you choose to keep dancing long after the curtain falls. And this time, we would not stop. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, Please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.